I have got to answer these questions that I promised a student I would get these questions done. So these are great questions in regard to philosophy, program design, how things have changed since I started training athletes long ago, mistakes I've made. So good stuff regardless of where you're at as a coach. And I love these questions because I make sure that I'm really helping you guys out direct to what you want versus me guessing. So check this out. First question, what is your exercise philosophy? And if you guys could see our videos and see what we're doing on YouTube, on Instagram, really it's all about overall athleticism. You'll see athletes lifting heavy. You'll see them doing some bodybuilding work. You'll see them doing a lot of jump training, sprint training. So you see us really working their weak areas, doing what they need to do, but overall building athletes, building athleticism. So they need to take those new traits of strength, speed, athleticism, explosiveness, and then they have to build upon their sports skills. So we could train an athlete as great as we want to, but if that athlete does not love getting better at his or her sport, whatever that sport is, or multiple sports, then the training is going to have less of an overall impact. So the training that we do is this little piece of the puzzle, or a big piece of the puzzle. Then you've got nutrition, you've got lifestyle, when do they sleep, the eating habits, the consistency. You've got coaching, so how great or good are their coaches? Some kids that train with us are not so fortunate. They have coaches who don't really inspire them, educate them, lead them, help guide them with opportunities, parenting as well. So we've got a lot of pieces of the puzzle that make a great athlete. We're trying to fill the puzzle of physical preparation, overall performance, nutrition guidelines, and lifestyle, and really teaching them character skills, leadership, work ethic. So if they don't have the support system from a coach or from their school or from their teammates, that they learn to take those things into their own hands and apply it to their goals, to their own life in general. So overall athleticism and strong life, strong mind, strong body, strong life. The strength must transcend and exceed beyond the gym walls. What is the most difficult part of training wrestlers? Good question. I would say the most difficult part really of training any athlete, especially at the high school level, is the tough time we have to communicate and connect with their coaches. So they might train with us during the off season, but then as soon as wrestling season starts, their coaches are really destroying them with distance running or circuit training, which really, when they're drilling and wrestling, that is their circuit training. So they're piling on more on top of enough. And, we could only make it so far with an athlete if they're not going to train with us in season. So what happens there? We've got a 10 or 12-week season, depending on how good they do at the end of the year. But they stop training with us. So 2 weeks in, they start getting a little weaker. A month in, more weak. 6 weeks in, 8 weeks in, it keeps going down, down, down. Then at the most important time of the year, the end of the year, the districts and regions and states, we haven't seen that kid for 10, 11 weeks. And now he has lost pretty much a lot of that strength that he has developed and worked so hard for in the off season. So the toughest thing is with any athlete is in America, in many places, not all places, is that we as independent strength coaches do not have good relations with the high school coaches. And look, I'll take responsibility for it because I call them out on it. For example, I was training kids from a school, and then the coach said, listen, we do everything in-house. One of our phys ed teachers is CrossFit certified. Now, has nothing to do with CrossFit. I've seen bad coaches in all areas, all realms, but it's like it just shows the lack of knowledge that people have and that they think it's all the same. It's not all the same. I've even seen, Division I coaches working out doing things wrong, like doing the one-arm row incorrectly, setting the shoulders or not setting the shoulders, not knowing how to position their back when lifting weights, not knowing how to squat all the way down, how to sit the hips back, all these little nuances that make a program go from simply ineffective to effective. Forget about good to great. So the tough thing is that the perception is it's all the same. If I squat and you squat, it's the same, but it's not the same. So that goes for all athletes, all coaches. How do you train wrestlers different than other athletes that you work with? If you work with other athletes, I know you mainly focus on wrestling. So I don't focus on wrestling. We just tend to get a lot of wrestlers, and I'm a strength coach at a Division I university. This is the second school I've been at. And we tend to get the most wrestlers for a few reasons. Number one, I'm a wrestler. I probably speak their language. Number two, if you look at other athletes, football players, oftentimes their coaches make mandatory workouts. Number two, other sports now have their, the sport coaches trying to do stuff. So we train swimmers, and then the swim coach tries to do their own training. So really, I found that the wrestling community tends to be the most motivated in understanding that if you're not strong, fast, tough, explosive, we're going to be in trouble here. Whereas in the world of football, a lot of these parents and kids are confused. The running backs and the receivers think that everything's about speed. They don't realize they need to be strong, because to get explosive and fast, you need to be strong. And then the big guys, the linemen, think that all they got to do is squat, bench, and do a power clean. But that's also wrong. So I think there's so much knowledge and education out there, but somehow, some way, we're not impacting people the right way. So wrestlers and all athletes that come through our door, they get assessed. They constantly get assessed, and we program around that. And the common problem, or the common things we work on, is the same as most. The heavy kids, whether it's a wrestler or not, tend to have poor motor control, poor coordination, poor relative body strength. In a nutshell, they're weak. And I found this to be in all athletes. We train football players, lacrosse, swimmers. They're weak, and they need a lot of overall strength, speed. It's not like we're one pendulum or the next. Question here. Let me see what we just had. Answering questions here. Whoops. Show live chat messages. Oh, man. I don't even know how to see those questions, guys. Hope all is well. Love your videos. Jay, post that question again as I answer these questions. It sounded like you mentioned something on nutrition, which will be good for the strength and conditioning Q&A. Next question here was asking, programming ideas, do you prefer linear or non-linear? Do you use periodization at all? Absolutely. Now, at the independent setting, you got to remember, regardless of a kid signing, his parents signing a monthly membership agreement or a year-long membership agreement, welcome to planet Earth and welcome to humans. Parents will sign their kids up for a year, and then they'll pull their kid out. And by the way, I don't... cancellation fees, none of that. If you don't want to be here, I don't want your money, even if you duped us and said you're going to be here for the year. So when we're training athletes at the independent setting, we're doing mini cycles of 2 to 3 weeks in length, and it's basically the concurrent model where we're developing strength, speed, muscle building, conditioning in every workout, and we're linearly kind of progressing with the big lifts. So we might do something similar to Jim Wendler's 5-3-1. So we might do 5x5 1 week. The next week is a 5x3. That third week, I don't tend to let the younger athletes build up to singles. It's pretty rare. At the college level, we're in season now. We have a postseason. We have a deep off season, and then we have the preseason. So training will definitely change during those times in a way where postseason, I'm going to reduce a lot of that emotional and joint strain. So I'm not going to be going too crazy with cleans and these aggressive lifts. I'm going to lay low on the jumps for a month after the season. rebuild a lot of that lost muscle, address injuries and areas that are basically imbalances. But we're always working on those things. And, I'll have a program planned, and then we see how they perform in a match or a tournament, and that might completely change the way the program gets planned. So yes, periodization all the time, but auto-regulation and the concurrent model is more of what I follow. How do your programs shift with your wrestlers' schedules? So sometimes I find myself getting too conservative. Oh, they've got a match, or they just finished the tournament, let's deload them. The interesting thing about wrestlers and young athletes in general is you start deloading them and training them and treating them like they're fragile. They start to perform fragile. We start to get too scared that the wheels are going to fall off if they actually work hard, but they're not. So we train hard on a consistent basis. If I feel like they're run down, I lower that volume big time, but I still get an intense workout in with the guys. And I just make it shorter, increase a little bit of the recovery stuff that we do afterwards, the soft tissue work, the mobility, and even just recovery could be get that workout done in 30 minutes instead of an hour, get out of here, go get a good meal, and then you guys go back to your room and take a nap. So I find that sometimes people get and I used to do this in the beginning, very rigid. We're going to train for 3 weeks and we're doing a 4th week deload. I don't care what you say. You want to break a record? No, 4th week deload. So I auto-regulate. Sometimes I purposely pull them back, knowing that that's going to help them come back better. Other times they get pushed when maybe according to science they need to deload. But what happens is the mind is such a big factor in the training of a wrestler, and all athletes, but especially wrestlers, that you have to be able to blend the art of coaching with the science and the whole practicality. If you're all science, there's a lot of things that break science because of how these kids live, their nutrition, their lifestyle, their sleep habits, the stress from the computer and the phone in their face. I mean, the emotional stress that kids have today compared to 20 years ago, 10 years ago is way different because they're constantly engaging. There's no downtime. They're always looking on Instagram and Snapchat or whatever they're doing. And that stress changes things. It changes the way science should work. What is your style of training like? My own style of training is, I've got a torn labrum, but I feel really good. So I'm usually going to squat and deadlift at least once a week, squatting often twice a week. I do a lot of unilateral work. I do a lot of carries. My own program is very, general physical preparation. I'm 42. I'm not so worried about the numbers I'm moving as much as I used to be, but I train a lot to train my mind, to keep that edge so I don't find myself getting to be like the common man. So if you look at my videos, you see me doing the big stuff: cleans, squats, med ball throwing, heavy shouldering, carries of all kinds of odd objects, kettlebell training, a lot of pulling, a lot of calisthenics. So, kind of like when I start training adults, they train very similar to the athletes, but I just don't do all the jump training with them because they've lost a lot of that coordination. And also, if I'm going to train somebody who's an adult, they don't need that explosiveness and that athletic. They need to be fit. They need to be in shape. But you're not going to find me doing high rep snatches, high rep power cleans. I'm not going to do that. What would a typical training session look like for your athletes? I'll give you an example. I'll do movement prep with them, all kinds of skipping, hopping, animal movements, a lot of posterior activation, face pulls, pull aparts, a lot of trunk stability, so bird dogs, side planks, hollow rocks. We incorporate some calisthenics, some sleds, some light dumbbell and kettlebell work to get the body and mind warmed up. If they're moving and I see their hips are tight or they're doing things that show me that they're tight or a little achy, I connect with that kid, communicate, give that kid some specific mobility to get his body and mind ready, not just the body. They both work together. And then when I see they're ready, we get into the training, which oftentimes includes throwing of med balls, sprint work, jump training, so a lot of explosive work. And oftentimes we will communicate with we will blend that explosive and jump training with some of the big lifts. Yesterday was a Saturday morning. The guys did sumo or trap bar deadlift coupled with some medium hurdle jumping for about 6 sets. Then they did floor presses with chains coupled with, trying to remember what they did. They did floor press with chains for 3 reps, one-arm kettlebell or dumbbell clean and press for 3 reps, and then recline row for max. So after that, they went to carries. Somebody was asking about military training. After they did those lifts, they did carries, arms, back extensions, jumping rope. So a bit of a circuit at the end with conditioning, and I sneak in arms and muscle building work. What piece of advice do you give to new strength coaches? Number 1 is be humble and be very open-minded to learning. I've ran into a lot of up-and-coming strength coaches, new strength coaches who really do a very poor job of impressing me with their eagerness to learn. Their work ethic is very poor and a lot of excuses. It's really sad, and I think that shows that they just don't care. If you care, if you genuinely care about becoming a great strength coach, you won't argue with somebody who you've asked to mentor you. And I've had some pretty poor experiences with interns where they're just lazy. They do the bare minimum. They don't do extra. They don't research on their own. You give them like a few books and they look at you like it's such a stressful thing. I mean, even to this day, I devour books and stay up quite late reading because I'm so excited to learn more. So you guys need an eagerness to learn. Be ready to work your ass off, and you need to wow people with your work ethic. Being a strength coach is extremely time-consuming. It's tough. How have you grown as a strength and conditioning coach? I'm constantly learning and constantly evolving, but the most learning I do is on the ground floor. And what I've learned is through the years that we're getting, there's always going to be unique kids in your program, kids who maybe don't fit into what you're doing, and you have to, if they believe in something, you have to learn how to work with that and then input what you know is going to work for them. So I'd also say I was way tougher on kids in my early days. I would kick a lot more kids out. Now I give them time to do what's called turn the corner. So they're not going to be a hammer right away. It's going to take time. And I kind of look at like a down the road, a bigger picture type thing. The shitty thing is kids come and go too quickly now at the independent setting. So in turn, it makes us not look good because you don't get the results you know you could get. I mean, we got kids that train with us for a year who still don't eat breakfast. It's so weak. It's really disappointing. And that's why I think I got results much faster. Back in the day, 10 plus years ago, I had a different type of kid. Kids that showed up, they followed through, man. I told them how to eat, and they did it immediately. The breakfast, the lunch, the eating after school. Now, like kids, a lot of kids are soft. Their parents are extremely scared that if they work out once a week in addition to swimming or wrestling or baseball or football, their kid is going to just, his legs will fall off because he did squats. Like it's really weak. Somebody asked me, how would you train military? We've had people come through going into law enforcement, going into like the special agencies, FBI and whatnot. We've trained all those guys who are active, guys who have gone into some of those special forces units like Rangers, and they train with our guys, but what they end up doing is independently, they sneak stuff in between. So let's say the guys are doing floor press, clean and press, recline row. You'll see that guy might end up like sprinting and coming back or throwing in more jumping. They just do more. They do more because mentally they're more intense. They're more aggressive. And, this whole kind of question, Q&A from Cole, is you have to have a general framework when you're training people, and then you've got to be ready to adapt and adjust according to their emotional state, their mental state, and where they are as a person. And then you have to say, this is where I want to get them to. This is what they need to be able to do. And then you reverse engineer from that. Hope that helped you guys out. Cole, hope this helped you out, my man. I'm just flooded with emails, so it took me a while to get back to you. Hit the links below, a lot of free stuff, and then you have stuff and opportunity to invest, take your knowledge to new levels. Peace out, guys. Thank you.